Today I want to talk to you about a wonderful phrase that we find in 2 Kings chapter 16. It's the phrase, "Come up and save me." Here it is, 2 Kings chapter 16, verses 7 and 8, where we read this. So Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and save me from the hand of the king of Syria and from the hand of the king of Israel, who rise up against me. And Ahaz took silver and gold that was found in the house of the Lord, and in the treasures of the king's house, and sent it as a present to the king of Assyria. King Ahaz of Judah saw the combined armies of Syria and Israel come against him, and in a panic, he begged the king of Assyria for help. Ahaz did this even though Isaiah offered him a sign for assurance of God's help in the struggle against the combined armies of Israel and Syria. That's back in Isaiah chapter 7. Sadly, Ahaz refused under the excuse of not wanting to test God, when really what he wanted to do was to put his trust in a pagan king, the king of Assyria. So Ahaz said to the pagan king, I am your servant and your son. Come up and save me. It is so sad to see a king who reigns over God's people to bow down to a pagan king. Ahaz surrendered to one enemy in order to defeat another enemy. He refused to trust in the God of Israel, and instead he put his trust in an enemy of Israel. Now, it wasn't enough for Ahaz to simply bow down to the king of Assyria. Next, we read that he took the silver and the gold that was found in the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house, and he sent it as a present to the king of Assyria. Essentially, Ahaz made Judah a subject kingdom to Assyria. Ahaz now took his orders from the Assyrian king, and he sacrificed the independence of the kingdom of Judah. Imagine the blessing that would have come if Ahaz had surrendered and sacrificed to the Lord with the same energy and heart that he surrendered to the Assyrian king. Ahaz was willing to trust in and to humble himself before a pagan king, but he wasn't willing to do it before the God of Israel. What a contrast this was to Ahaz's royal ancestor, King David. David said this in Psalm 18, In my distress I called upon the Lord and cried out to my God. You see, we all have a choice in a crisis. We can trust things that are set against God, or we can trust God. In the case of Ahaz, his surrender to the king of Assyria worked in the short term, but it was a disaster in the long term. His wrong choice was bad for him, and it was bad for the kingdom of Judah. Yet, let's look for something good in this in 2 Kings chapter 16. When anyone cries out to God, saying, I am your servant and your son, come up and save me, then God will answer. What Ahaz should not have said to the king of Assyria is perfectly appropriate for us to say to the living God. I am your servant and your son, come up and save me. When we speak like that to God, then God will answer. So appeal to God on the basis of your being his servant. Appeal to God on the basis of his adoption of you, that you are a son or a daughter in his family. Then humbly ask him to rescue you. God loves to respond to those who surrender to him and to who do his will. So cry out to God like this and do it today.